that as a man and as a husband and as a father and, as a provider and as a Christian who's supposed to have all the answers and stuff like that,
Right.
I felt like that I never really had a chance to just talk and be heard.
But I do want to ask you a question, right?
Sure.
Um, have you been to therapy before?
As I drink my water, yes, yes, I have. Yes, I have, and I'll expound on that, but yes, I have.
What was your experience like?
Um, my experience, the first time, me and my wife were fighting like cats and dogs,
Mhm.
100% terrible, and we went and we saw somebody, and she was the therapist leaned super, super heavy towards my wife's point of view.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna say what race she was, but you know.
Noted.
So um everything my wife said that she told the therapist, she was like, because she had just had the baby.
Yeah.
So it was like oh man, poor wife. Her name is Danielle.
Mhm.
Poor Danielle, how are
Mhm.
you doing? And then she would say something else going on in life. Oh my God, how are you making it? Like you're so strong, you're so brave.
Yeah.
And like it was just a really lean towards her a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, she is strong and she is brave, but we're both here. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And like,
Mhm.
so that kind of put me off. And I think the results of that session was like, okay, Gerald, that's me, y'all. Okay, Gerald, well, y'all can work together, but you need to do better. So I was like, well, now therapy is becoming like a me bashing thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like that kind of sucked. So that was my first experience of therapy. We had a couple of more therapists
Okay.
and they were better. Uh they were better, but that first initial thing, it was kind of bad. Second version was just me. Um when I would have therapy, not couples therapy, just me.
Right. Individual.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was the greatest thing that I have ever been to in my life because I felt like that as a man and as a husband and as a father and, as a provider and as a Christian who's supposed to have all the answers and stuff like that,
Right.
I felt like that I never really had a chance to just talk and be heard. And I think that's one of the things that happens with people who may be gifted or maybe whatever, as W.E.B. Du Bois called it, the talented 10th.
Mhm.
Um, you're always expected to have the thing, or at least a baseline of a thing figured out.
Right.
And you're always the one giving advice or giving answers or giving strategies or paths or whatever the case.
Mhm.
So like I just never really felt heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the time where I could talk to a therapist and it was just them talking to me,
Mhm.
Gerald, not the husband, not the father.
Mhm.
It was great. We
Right.
just talked. So those were my therapy experiences.
So with the first experience, right? Um, I mean, it's already places in society where you can go if you as a black man, if you don't want to be heard and seen, if we're being honest, right?
Wow. Yeah.
I, and so when it comes to therapy, one of the things I'm really intentional about with my clients is creating like a safe space. And I know we hear it like all the time. People say like, "Oh, this is a safe space. This is a safe space." Like I'm so sincere about that safe space, especially because like I know it's so many places you can go in society where you don't feel safe,
Yeah.
where you don't feel seen, where you don't feel heard, right? And so last year in working with so many men, I can't tell you how sad it made me to hear black men tell me time after time after time after time that they don't feel safe anywhere.
Mm.
Not at home, not
Yeah.
at work,
Yeah.
not in their community, not at church.
I'd be interested to hear like why they don't feel safe, but I could imagine
Yeah.
that there's not like you really as a man,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
really can't be vulnerable And well, number 1, you can't be vulnerable. Number 2, you don't really have the tools to be vulnerable.
Mhm.
Um, because like even as I feel like myself being vulnerable and trying to break through, like I feel this inner resistance.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
so
Like, it ain't safe, don't do that.
not you know what? Not even so much that it's not safe, don't do that. I think it's a um I I I can't afford to do that because I don't know how I'd be looked at afterwards.
Wow.
Because if I'm, like, super duper, like, vulnerable and I'm like, oh, I'm crying and weeping and I'm broke, right,
Yeah, yeah.
that whole thing breaks open.
Right.
After that, you move on, and then the next period of disagreement, like, now I'm not looked at as strong anymore.
But what experience have you had to kind of form that belief to where, like, if I be vulnerable, you may perceive me different?
I don't know. You're the therapist. I don't know.
Because I mean, it sounds, in listening to you, it sounds like somewhere along the way, you had an experience in which you maybe, and I could be wrong, right, chose to be vulnerable and it was weaponized. Or you were looked at maybe in a different light.
Mm.
That's what it sounds like when I hear you say that. I mean, is
Yeah,
that true?
maybe. Maybe. I guess when I'm thinking about it, yeah, maybe I can think of one particular time, I can think of one particular time, that I was sharing with should I say this? Well, she sleeps, so she won't. She doesn't look at the shows, so it's fine. But I was sharing one time, like, I was talking with my wife and saying, like, how I wanna be better with time
Right.
because she's very, very good with time.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not bad with time, but, like, she's very good with time.
Right.
So, it was very it could have been very small, but I was like, I wanna be better with time, and then
Right.
a thing came up where I wasn't good with time, and then, like, it kinda came up,
Yeah.
and when it came up and she wasn't even doing it like it was like, "Imma beat your head."
Intentionally.
Yeah.
Right. It was the accountability.
Yeah, but, like, the way that it came, and maybe because I'm not vulnerable a lot, and there was a
Mhm.
moment that I was vulnerable, I was like, "Okay, well, I'll never do this again."
Mm.
Um, and that's just kind of a thing that I can kind of remember, and
Let's pause right here for a second though, right?
okay.
So you tell yourself like I'll never do this again. Like that's the inner dialogue. You didn't say that verbally, did you? Or did you say it verbally?
No, it was an inner dialogue.
Okay. So you say then I'll never do this again, right? And so then like say in conversation with your wife, you don't say certain things. Do you think that can contribute to like disconnection?
Yeah, 100%, but, here's the thing, and I wonder if a lot of men you tell me, I wonder if a lot of men go through the same thing
Yes.
because
Yes.
my my inner dialogue, I think I my inner dialogue is so prevalent in my life. I think it almost may be unhealthy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I talk so much to myself and
Mhm.
think so many things through.
Mhm.
And uh because I'm like we kind of talked about a little bit older off camera, like I'm not in my home state and
Right.
I'm not around my family that I grew up with,
Right.
friends that I grew up with, and I haven't been for a very, very long time,
Mhm.
at least 14 years.
Oh, that's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so I kinda always kinda had this thing where I kind of felt, well, at least for 14 years, like never felt home. And the people in that time that have known me, they've known somewhat of a polished version of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like the only vulnerable version of me is back in Texas 14 years ago.
Mhm.
So and then plus, like, I was kinda goofy, I was kind of like I was very, very, very silly in that whole thing, and, like, I said inappropriate things and
Yeah.
just wrong timing and stuff, like, I was young, whatever. Oh, I
Mhm.
was hilarious, but, still, it's like, okay, well, that version of me is kind of offensive, so I need to kinda tone it down.
Tone it down a little
Yeah,
bit.
so I got all of that going on, and it's this constant tone down, and
Right.
then, like, I have cool people in my life, but, like, friends, which is a
Mhm.
whole different conversation.
Mhm.
Um, Not a lot. And even the ones that I do have, we're not close enough for me to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like 14-year ago, Texas Gerald
Mhm.
vulnerability. So I said all that to say that leads up to I talk to myself a lot.
Yes. Yes.
and I think, and maybe, I will give you money if you can answer this question for me, but or at least by EAP. But I think it's to a degree where, like, I've always talked slow. I'm from Texas,
Yeah.
but I'm self-monitoring so much in my head that it's hard for me just to say a sentence
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Like, because it's just always a self-filtering, like, am I saying the right thing? Will I be offensive? Will I convey the right point? All of this good stuff
Yeah.
instead of just saying what I think. Um,
So this episode is about depression, not anxiety. And but if you want to have me back to talk about anxiety, I specialize in that too.
my
But
lord, we was talking about seasonal depression. What
I know. Listen, we're going in the direction we're supposed to be going.
You asked me the question. Okay, go
But
ahead.
I want to say this, right? One of the things to take into consideration when it comes to the internal dialogue that you're having with yourself, we, people outside of you, don't have access to that. So what you're thinking and what you're telling yourself, all we see is the behavior, right? So
Mm,
all your wife sees is like, he's not as transparent as he was before. Oh, he hasn't mentioned anything else about time. 'Cause ever since I said to him, you said you was gonna work on time management, but I noticed you slacking in this area and I kind of called you out on it. You hadn't mentioned nothing else about time. Hmm. All we see is behavior,
mm,
right? And so if you're having that conversation within yourself about, ooh, not you calling me out on the fact that I'm not like doing a better job with time management. If you're not verbally sharing that, like, hey babe, like I really kind of felt like some type of way. And if you want to get even deeper, name the type of way. Cause we as black people be like, hey, I felt some type of way. Like
yeah.
anytime I hear somebody say that, I'd be like, name the emotion. So like what was the emotion that you felt when she called you out on the whole time thing?
Are you asking me?
I am. If you can remember.
No. I think it was shame.
Shame. Okay. So if you were to go back to that moment and share your inner dialogue that you're having with your wife and attach the emotion of shame to it, what would you say?